Okay, so welcome to everyone for this combined UPF seminar and VPHi Keynote Webinar. So this webinar is being recorded. It's my pleasure to welcome Roger Assaker, who is co-founder and CEO of MDSim, a startup company in In-Silico medicine. So Roger got his master in aerospace engineering from the University of Liège and his PhD in applied science from the Université Catholique de Louvain in Belgium. And he's the co-founder and CEO of MDSim company Luxembourg. So MDSim is a health tech startup active in silico medicine, as I said, and the company is focused on using computer modeling and simulations and AI to help improving the quality of life of millions of patients suffering from spine deformity. The company is developing software as medical device that aims to help medical device companies and surgeons to optimize spine surgeries. So Roger is a serial technology entrepreneur, sounds a bit like serial killer for good. And so before MDSim, actually he founded e-Xstream engineering, and that he exited to MSc software before becoming the CEO of this very same MSc software company. And so it became this bit lost, but e-Xstream is also on the design engineering business unit of Hexagon. Was that? Yeah. Okay. So he's passionate for customer engagement and people leadership, and Roger so tackles challenging problems using innovative technology and business model, which we will see now through the, this is what was written. Okay, Roger, so the floor is yours. Thank you very much. For the question, so type in the chat and then I will read because for some reason the sound doesn't arrive in the room.
Thanks, Jerome. Thank you everybody for being here. In this sunny afternoon. If I were in your shoes, I will be at the beach. You know, if in Barcelona, what better than being at the beach now with the sunny weather? So it's honestly my favorite city in the world, and I'm always happy to be here. And I came this morning for the PhD of Morteza, and I will try to show you a little bit what we are doing in In-Silico. Okay. So I don't know how much time I have. 40 minutes max. Okay. So, you know, I'm a beginner in silico medicine, so complete beginner. So I don't know anything. All what I know is almost here. And, but so when I discussed with Jerome and Jerome asked me to do this webinar, so what I said is I cannot teach anything about In-Silico, but what I can show you is a little bit my story, how I went from aerospace engineering, where I spent some time, to start In-Silico medicine, and you know we'll be learning together basically. So it's not working, and it's a good start, yeah. So what you are seeing on the left, it's a courtesy from my previous company, from MSc Software, where it's showing like multi-scale modeling, multi-physics modeling of an aircraft flying in a fluid. So this is a little bit what I've done before, and what you are seeing here on the right is where we are going with, this is a picture of a surgeon doing spine surgery. So my background, as I said, I started in Lebanon. You know, I left Lebanon during the war when I was 18 after my baccalaureate to study aerospace engineering. So in Liège, which is focusing on simulation. So we did a lot of computer modeling and simulation. Then I did my PhD in magnetohydrodynamics, fluids and magnetic interaction. And then I was hired before the end of my PhD, you know, 1 year before the end of my PhD at the company in Luxembourg called Goodyear, where I learned a lot about, you know, modeling tires, which is a completely very hard problem to solve, you know, nonlinear, incompressible, and you name it. And focusing on a technology coming from national labs in the US and applying it into tires. And during my time, my 5 years at Goodyear, I learned a lot about the technology. I did an MBA because I wanted to have some view on the business side of engineering. But I also learned that it's not for me to be in a big company. So I didn't like the fact in a company where you are just one between many others to contribute, and it has some inertia going for it. It's not anything typical, but it's typical for a large company. So I discovered that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And this is at the end of my my 5 years at Goodyear. I met with a professor where I used to do my PhD, and we decided to create Extreme Engineering together. So Extreme Engineering, it's about multi-scale modeling, going from the microstructure of a material to its macroscopic behavior. So I started there. It's we grew it to several millions, like 25, 30 people, I think, when we sold it to MSC Software. This is where you are seeing MSC Software, which is the pioneer in finite element analysis. It's the first company which was created to support the mission to the moon of the US. And it's the developer of famous software like Nastran, Mark, Adams, and so on and so forth. So I sold it to MSC Software, and then we sold MSC Software in 2017 to Hexagon, which is a large company. I will talk about it, with several, with more than 4.5 billion in revenues and more than 20,000 people. And lately, as I said, 1 year ago, I created MDSim, which stands for like medicine. It's a play of word. And it's MDSim for simulation, and it's simulation for the medical doctors. This is where we are today. Okay, for me as an entrepreneur, everything starts with a why. I don't know if you are familiar with Simon Sinek or people who talk about the why in a company, why it's important. And for me, it's extremely important because, I never do something what I'm not passionate about. So when the passion dies, I change. And typically when something I'm really passionate about, I think we have the necessary things to be successful, because this passion, it drives me, but it also drives the teams that I work with, the teams that I hire, the team that I build. And also it drives passion into the customers, which will buy easily from us, which will support the limitation of some technology and will help us continue growing. So what we've done is created Xstream with a professor of mine, professor and that I met during my time at Louvain-la-Neuve. So we created Xstream together in 2003. The logo is from epsilon to infinity. So from the small to the big. And one of the first hires that we hired is Laurent here. He worked with me for 20 years, and we created Digimat, which is a digital material, a platform which became #1 in the world in terms of multi-scale material modeling. So it's a 20-year story. Basically, this is during the celebration of our 15 years. But this became the #1 software in terms of nonlinear multi-scale material modeling. So Laurent was the one who built Digimat with us, and he was the first hire of MDSim. Now, when I created MDSim, the first job offers that I make, Laurent applied to it, and now he's with us now to build the new story, which I will be talking about a little bit later. So long story short, during this almost 20 years with Xstream, we went from what is now a part of one of our modules with the research work of the professor, which is so we went from research at the university, which was very advanced, very complicated to use by industry, to create what we called at that time our 10x ICME solution. So going from technology to allow us to develop materials, to test them virtually, to manage them, to exchange them between providers and users, to see how they behave in manufacturing, like additive, how they behave in a car, for instance, in the crash conditions, and so on and so forth. So we created a really nice solution starting from the university, basically, starting from PhD work, like what Morteza saw this morning. So examples here is about where you go from the microstructure of a material, where you have like polymers with fibers in them and some additives to compute the stresses, the strains, and basically to create the material on a computer. And it's a nice city, actually, Barcelona, but it's pretty hot, right? So we basically used simulation to do material modeling. And the most things that, you know, the biggest things that I'm proud of is how we brought it from the university, from research in the university and papers, to hundreds of customers around the world, basically. So this is one of our last users meeting. We had more than 200 people, and all these guys here that you are seeing are engineers and all the famous companies that you can think of it. You know, I cannot give their names all, but they are the top 500, Fortune 500 companies. They are all our customers over here. Okay, and so we created e-Xstream. We grew it to be sold to MSC Software. And I said MSC Software, maybe you are familiar with companies like Abacus, like ANSYS. I don't know how familiar you are with companies like MSC, now became Hexagon. But MSC actually is the pioneer in finite element simulation. It's the first company which took finite element for industrial use. Okay, so it was created in 63, and as I said before, it was initially created to compute the vibration of the Apollo launcher to go to the moon. Okay, so it's a very strong history of technology and innovation. And in 2017, it was sold to Hexagon together with other acquired companies like e-Xstream that I sold. Okay, this is the founders. I don't need to spend time about it, but during my history with MSC, we worked on a lot. You know, again, it's finite element modeling, is multi-body dynamics, but it's touching more than the materials. What we brought to the MSC was the material aspect, but we've been doing things like multiphysics, fluid multi-body dynamics, acoustics, rotatory system, and so on and so forth. So it's a multi-fit story, and it includes manufacturing. It includes vibration with Nastran. It includes autonomous driving, acoustics, multiphysics, and you name it. Why I'm doing all this is that we spend a lot of time using simulation in industries. You know, automotive, aerospace, electronics, and you name it. But as you can see here, there's not much application into the medical area. It's mostly in industrial. When I took the lead of MSC, 2 years before leaving, one of the things that I wanted to initiate is, what I put in place is our strategy moving forward, basically. And our strategy, we wanted to do a lot of things about using the latest technologies, like artificial intelligence and other stuff, making simulation accessible for everybody, to be able to use it on your iPad, on your iPhone, and so on, anywhere. Maximize productivity, make it easy to use, easy to learn. Of course, having quality results and integrating it into the manufacturing, not only designing, but taking it to manufacturing. But the two topics that I had close to my heart at that time to go beyond what we were using simulation for, one was using simulation for sustainability. All of us are facing today sustainability problems, and we need to reduce our impact on the environment. So I said that simulation could be used for environment. You can use simulation acoustics, for instance, for reducing noise. You can use advanced material modeling for reducing weight and energy consumption. You can use all the technologies that we are using to improve performance and to reduce cost. We can also use it very nicely for improving our impact on the environment, recycling, and you name it. So I thought that this is like, instead of designing only for performance and cost, we can design for performance, cost, and environmental impact. So this was one topic that I started here, and now we are investing a lot into this area. The other topic that I found that we are not doing enough in terms of simulation was medical. So I said, one thing is to use simulation for environment. The other thing is to use simulation for medical. And But simulation for medical, all the tools that we are using, they are, all the companies that we know in medical, they are using simulation to design implants, okay? So to reduce the cost of developing implants, so it's done. But simulation for medical doctors to support, clinical application is very very rare. I will not get too much into this. So this is where I get. So I found that it will be hard for established industrial company to attack. Usually you have the sales force and you have the technology to go to B2B customers. You can go to, let's say, Boeing or Airbus, talk from engineer to an engineer, and sell them technology to develop aircraft or automotives or material or mobile phone or whatever. But to go and speak to other completely different type of users, like medical doctor, industrial companies are not well prepared. So I kind of said, it's easier to start all this in a new startup, basically in a new company, where we can use the same technology, the technology for computer modeling and simulation and AI, but develop a solution which is tailor-made for medical applications, for the medical doctor. So this is where I started in silico medicine, and I have another reason for it. I will talk about it a bit later. But as naively, when I started to look at in silico medicine, I said, why not developing a digital twin for the entire body, from scratch? And started to talk with some, starting to understand how difficult it is. I discovered that it's extremely complex on the one side, and on the other side, if you go to a VC, a venture capitalist, and you are raising money and you tell them, I want to attack the whole body at the same time, they don't take you seriously. They will say, wow, it's too big to tackle. So I said, let's see what is around and discover which area I want to work on. So I started to look on the internet what is existing in silico medicine, and the first companies that I ran into was LM, which is actually here from Barcelona. And I looked who was the CEO, because I find it very cool, modeling heart and so on. And who is the CEO? It was Chris, which is sitting here. And it happened that I knew Chris from my previous life. So I called Chris and started to ask some question about in silico, what is it? And he was good enough to convince me to invest in LM. So I invested in LM and being part of the board now. I will show you some examples. And then I continued discovering, there are people doing brain, other people doing some like stents in the cardiovascular. I discovered a company in Grenoble also called Twinsight, doing orthopedic modeling of different articulation, including the knee. And I also invested into them. So I said, let's invest in some companies which are well run, well developed. One was the heart with LM, the other one was the knee with Twinsight. I looked on other technologies. I will not talk too much into the details. But what we decided to do is to tackle the spine part, and with a software program called MDSim that we are developing under MDSim. Okay. So the focus is on the spine as it is related to me directly, but through participation, through investments and participation into the board. As I said, working with Twinsight, the CEO of Twinsight is Mathieu Rimo, and you have his contact here if you have any question related to this. So, but basically here's Twinsight is developing also a software as a medical device, which go beyond what is done today. Today, knee surgery is based on bone alignments, aligning the bones of the knee together at a certain angle. But this is what is done today. What Twinsight is offering is to enable pre-surgery planning, to optimize also the tension in the ligaments, and also the patella, and finally the movements, if it runs correctly, and finally to be able to model the dynamics of the knee. So to optimize the knee in terms of in 4 dimensions, basically the 3 space dimension and and in time. And the objective is to improve the outcome of the surgery by looking into the dynamic modeling of the spine. And it goes from the images of the patient, so it's patient specific, which allow you to modify a virtual patient and optimize the outcome of the surgery. And the next step is to go also and support the development of patient specific devices. This is as it concerns TwinSight, you know, going from, as I said, from the 3D model of the bones, the landmarks, the measures of the patient-specific landmarks, and finally predicting with simulation the patient-specific kind of planning. As for LM, you better ask Chris if you have question about it later on. I'm a complete beginner again. But the point here is the biomedical simulation of the heart and the flow into the heart. It's a spin-off, as I said, from Barcelona Supercomputer Center, with a huge amount of computer power. And it is solving, you know, there's plenty of application of it. But one of the application here is the resynchronization, and with a pacemaker, which pacemaker is giving like an electrical impulse into the heart, and it is you need to verify by simulation if it is optimal. It is optimal in terms of creating enough blood flow, basically. It is optimal in terms of avoiding the creation of some local stagnation of the blood, which create clots, and also that it is well anchored into the heart to avoid creating problems later on. You know, Chris maybe is I'm not giving enough accuracy into what I'm saying, but what is cool is that it is allow you to do things that that you cannot measure. Basically, you cannot look at them into different ways other than the simulation. I will not talk too much into this application, but this one is also very very interesting, where you have you know, arrhythmia. And the idea here is when you are developing medication, you need to test the medication in terms of cardiac toxicity. And what In-Silico models like LM will allow you to do is to check, for instance, the you know, the effect of concentration on kind of biomarker here. And the effect of this concentration, you can do it by clinical trials, you know, trying it on a cohort of people, but you can do it also with LM based on a cohort of virtual patients that you can use to test the toxicity of the medication. And you can see that it is in the same accuracy level, and you can see even more information in terms of effect of the sex on all this. Okay, and if you have questions, feel free to ask Chris present. And this is the heart of Chris here. So they are so much involved into what they are doing that they are, you know, the whole team, I think, right? The whole team kind of created a model of their own heart. And here, I don't dare to explain the heart condition of Chris, but it's pumping as it should be, apparently. Okay. Okay, zooming into the things that I know a little bit better. And still not much, but it's MDSim, as I said, simulation for the medical doctor. This is a company that we created 1 year and 3 days 1 year ago and 3 days exactly, and it's tackling that problem. Okay, so we know that more than 500 million people are suffering from back pain. You know, everybody suffers from back pain at some point. If you are not suffering right now because you are too young, but wait a little bit and you will be suffering from back pain. So this is a certainty. It costs the US economy only $635 billion a year. So it's a big problem. And this problem is increasing more and more due to the aging of the population. As the population is aging, people after, above 60 years old are more than 2 billion. So this is 20% of the population, and all these people will have back problems and will need to kind of help them. So aging, one aspect, plus other topics like osteoporosis, scoliosis, trauma, tumor, and you name it, lead to spine degeneration. You will see people which are suffering from scoliosis, but also people which are starting to bend more and more, and they are bending, and when they need to do their activities, they have to put a lot of effort to stay straight. And this is creating a lot of pain, and it's one of the worst healthcare burden of all chronic diseases. So spine deformation is a big problem. You see an example here, but it's a soft example that I use on purpose not to discourage investors. So this is a 34-year-old lady who is suffering from a scoliosis in this case. So as I said, it's relatively soft. And the solution for it is to, the people who were at Morteza's PhD this morning, they understand it. But for others, the solution for this is to realign the spine by cutting some vertebrae, deforming others, putting screws, and putting a bar to kind of put back the person in equilibrium with the right geometry. And so the person is straight again and can get back to life correctly. So fusion is the solution, might be the solution, but the problem with fusion is that there's more than 40% of fusion surgeries which require revisions. So for instance, here there is some problem between two vertebrae. The surgeon decided to fuse together a couple of segments here, two vertebrae, but the problem, he didn't account for the entire balance of the spine, and the patient broke the screw in this case and broke his segments above the last instrumented vertebra here. So he required the second surgery, and later on he broke again and he required the third surgery. So these are heavy surgeries that can take up to 7, 8, 10 hours and cost a lot of money and a lot of pain. Okay? So to do it right, basically to get the surgery right, it has to be well balanced, so recover the geometrical shape of the spine, include the right segment, where to start, where to end, which segment to be included, and have the right shape of the spine and of the rods which are included. So the idea, it's a whole story that you need to verify to get it right and to avoid surgery, to basically to get the correct patient outcome. As I said, and it was said by Morteza this morning, it's more than 40% require revision. And sometimes the revision, it's not because something went wrong. The problem is that we don't know why it requires revision. And this is an example which was done by it's an artist. He was like suffering like crazy. He got the first surgery, and the first surgery went bad. The patient kind of failed above the instrumentation, and he came back to a specialized surgeon in spine deformation, and he was reoperated. And the outcome of this operation, if you look at it based on all the criteria, what are the criteria for balance? They were met. How the surgery was done, it was perfect. Everything was perfect from a surgical point of view. So everything was respected, but still the patient failed again, and he required the third surgery, which you can see how much he was instrumented. So the point in some cases is not because the surgeon has less experience or because something went wrong and we cannot do what is need to be done. Everything was perfect and it still failed. And it was a question mark why it failed and required an additional revision. So all this shows that it is quite complicated to do it right. And this is exactly why we decided to create a software as a medical device, where we decided to create SpineSim. As I said, it's a software as a medical device. Our objective is not to give it to device manufacturer. Our objective is to give it to surgeon, to help them. It will be given to medical device manufacturer, but the first objective is surgeon, to help them optimize spine surgeries, to improve the life of people. This is our real objective, okay? This is what we want to do. And in terms of technology, it will be using computer modeling and simulation for sure. All the finite elements that I showed you before that we've been doing in other industries, we want to use it, of course, but with a heavy focus on AI as well, because finite element analysis alone will not solve the problem, because a lot of things are unknown. The material properties are unknown. The exact geometry is not really possible to model in details. The loading conditions are mostly unknowns, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things to be covered, and it will require heavy use of AI. And what we want to do is not to do like 2-3 vertebrae on the lumbar side or also the thoracic side. We need to take into account the entire spine if we want to be having a chance to be useful from the industry perspective. And the big challenge is that it will not be given to a PhD, which will spend 6 months to set up a model and 3 other weeks to run it, and so on and so forth. It will be done to a surgeon, which gave us 5 minutes of time budget. They want to be able to plan the surgery and run FEA and AI in the background in 5 minutes time. Otherwise, they will not use it. Even 5 minutes is too much. I talked with a surgeon in the US 3 weeks ago, and he said even 1 minute they will not spend on planning a surgery if it makes their life more difficult than it is today. So the challenge is to take very advanced finite elements, which is on a geometry which is complicated, on a material which are extremely complicated, and we don't know the properties, with nonlinearities, contact, all kind of physics and so on, and give it to somebody who want to use it like using an iPhone, basically as easy as this. So this is what we put ourselves into it, and what we want to use for better patient outcome, lowers the risk of complications, shorters the surgery, and lowers the cost of the treatment. So the benefits are huge if we make it happen, okay? And making it happen is not to solve the problem once on a supercomputer by a PhD, but to be able to give it to a surgeon which has no engineering education whatsoever, to do it on his phone just before entering the surgery. So for this to happen, we need to develop patient-specific model, because each person is different. So a generic model will not do. It has to include the biomechanics of the person. It's not enough to be only focusing on the geometry, on the geometry thing, on the geometrical balance, everybody's done it, kind of. What we want to do is to include the biomechanics. Biomechanics will involve the loads, the stresses, the strains, the muscles, the ligaments, the intervertebral discs, and you name it. So it's all biomechanics. It's to be high fidelity and high accuracy. So it's not like garbage in, garbage out. It's not like approximate. It has to be correct, otherwise it will not add value. It has to be easy to learn, easy to use. You cannot expect a surgeon to spend time in a training room to train it like a training engineer, and he want to use it, intuitively, not like an engineer, click here and click there. Immersive. We want to be able to be as practical as a real 3-dimensional model. Focus on the clinical use. It will be SaaS, so cloud-based, and it has to run real time. What we want to do is to be able to do an osteotomy and see the effect immediately. We want to do a screw and see the effect immediately, not like wait, not even a minute, okay? Real-time simulation. And this is where we are. So yeah, so we started. So as I said, we started 1 year and 2 days ago, and the things are starting to take shape. You know, it's not like all solved, but I give you like a scoop. You know, the first view of the software going from the patient imaging to be able to reconstruct the 3D, measure everything in it, rebuild the three-dimensional, you know, I'm not getting too much into the detail, rebuild the three-dimensional model of the spine and being able to operate on it as it is in real life, okay? I cannot disclose much more at this stage. Who is the team of, you know, I said that there are several aspects why we created this. And the co-founders are Danny here, Richard, and myself. Danny, he spent his life and he did his PhD in computer modeling and simulation in aerospace as well. Spent his life in computer modeling and simulation and the last 10 years in quality and operations. So he's helping us on the ISO certification and FDA approval and CE marking. Richard is a professor of neurosurgery, so he's done 18,000 spine surgery over his career. You know, he does 600 a year, 400 to 600 a year. And he spent his career doing spine surgery. And me, you know, I've done what I needed to do in automotive aerospace. I wanted to try something new, and it's medical. And the problem is that we are two engineers and one doctor. We are three brothers. And we spend our time together. You know, we spend a lot of time. This is us from, you know, when we were younger. We golf a lot, we sail a lot, we do a lot of things together all the time. And when we speak to him and when we see what he's doing in terms of surgery, we cannot even imagine that somebody can operate on a person without being able to predict what is the outcome, you know, quantitatively. You know, like the mind of a surgeon and the mind of an engineer is quite different. And we said what we know could help a patient, and this is what we are trying to do. We are certainly not sure, but we want to try. And it's not something completely crazy or completely new. It's a typical cross-industry validation, you know, cross-industry innovation, basically. So there's no plane today, there's no car today, there's no mobile phone today, which are not designed with simulation. But still, there's a lot of surgery which are done without the support of simulation. And I think we can contribute to improve this a bit. Okay, so we built a team. As I said, we started a year ago. So Laurent, which created with me the first company, and you know, extremely brilliant guy, joined me. We had somebody on quality, developers, AI, very advanced simulation, and Oscar, which is like helping in some cases with the morale of the troop. And we are on a journey. You know, it's the beginning of the team. We are hiring as much as we can, but you know, the problem is to find good people. But our objective is to try to do in 5 years, going from the initiation of the product to go to market with all what it requires. I will not get too much into the details. So that's it. I will stop here. And as I said, we are hiring. So if you are interested, or if you know somebody which has a good background in AI, in simulation, in biomechanics, we have 2 open positions right now, and we continue. And if I accepted to come and give this talk is to spread the word of the fact that that we are hiring. So thank you so much, and I'm available for any question if you have.
Je vais utiliser celui-là. Okay, Roger, thank you very much for this brilliant talk. So that's basically no of time for questions. So online, I will ask you to voice your questions by chat, and I will read them if you have. Yes, was there? I don't know. My question was more along Vladimir, maybe you can have a mic.
Just very quickly, when you reconstruct the spine, is it from 2D X-rays, or you have like a 3D imagery of the spine from the patient?
Yeah.
And my follow-up question is there anything you can sample bone from somewhere else and get some properties of the material for the spine?
Yeah, two good questions. I think the 2D images only are not sufficient. So we are taking 2D images of a standing up patient of the full spine with 2 cross-section 2D. This is one, but it's far from being enough. So we are using CT scan in details to build 3D CT scans to build the whole geometry. And we are also using MRIs. So we are segmenting the 2D, the 3D, and the MRI, but each one for a different purpose. So we need the 3 of them, right? The second question is about the bone properties. We cannot, I don't think that we can take the properties of the bones from somewhere else. We are using different techniques. And even from bones, like for instance, to take into account osteoporosis, we need to have some kind of, measurement of the mineral density of the bones. So we are doing it, but sometimes it's coming from the hips, sometimes coming from some lumbar spine. But we are doing some treatments into it to kind of extrapolate it towards the real spine. But we cannot count on having exact properties of the material at each point, unfortunately. And this is part of the fun and part of the challenges of this area.
Okay, there was another question in the back, I think.
Thank you very much for the talk. So I was wondering, so if, for instance, a company contact us and they say we have this product that we produce, for instance, prosthetics, let's say, and we want to substitute the mechanical test for in-silico test. Instead of doing all the tests with the machine, so we do the simulation to test the resistance of this prosthetic. So I wondering, so what would be the step to have like a model that can achieve these things? So let's say if we want to use a model to test a product instead of doing a mechanical test, a physical test, what would be the step to do that? Yes, what would be the pipeline to do it from the silico point of view?
Roger, do you mind to answer in the mic? So it's those people who are online.
So so I'm by no means an expert. I don't need to at the same time. But what you need is to have a model which makes sense of the experimental status. Typically, what you will do is your model should replicate one of the standards. For instance, there are ASTM standards sometimes for some given tests. So you should replicate it. You should try to get it. You should validate it. Make sure that you validated it, and then you use it for testing. But the problem is that it cannot be used for regulatory clearance, basically. So they need to do the test still to pass regulation today. So I don't know if I answered your question exactly, but if I understood it correctly, you need to do the model, follow some standard, validate it, make sure that it gives you the same answer, and then use it. But use it for internal development, not for certification yet, at least. Yeah, I understand. So first, we are not here to do research. So I'm after business application by clinician of the technology. So we are, it's not our job to do the research part. We created a scientific advisory board to take all the research which is existing, the researcher, and feed us with what the state of the art today and how we can make out of them a pragmatic solution. Because, if I think of it from an engineering point of view, I will not start it even. The geometry is unknown to some extent. Materials are unknowns, loading conditions are unknowns, everything is unknown, so forget it. So what we are after is to define a specific areas of application and do all what we can to be able to discriminate between bad and good surgery. I cannot get too much into the details for some reasons, but the point is we are after a pragmatic solution to discriminate good from bad surgeries And we think we can make it. And we are crazy enough to think that we are make it, and we cannot prove it today, but we'll prove it in 5 years of time. And we will be doing it based on retrospective, we'll be building the model in such a way that all our building blocks are sound. So we can verify that every let's say our solution is made of 10 building blocks. We want to make sure that each building block is sound by itself. So we'll validate it step by step. And then we'll be validating the whole response in a retrospective clinical validation and in a prospective clinical validation. And we hope that it will be right. So we'll meet in 3, yeah. 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 Other things, you mean other organs, other physics? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. When we started multi-scale modeling of materials, it was far from being like accepted everybody, and we made it happen. So the idea is to focus on something and do it right. So we'll see. And I will let Chris answer your other question about his heart.
We met virtually last Friday or Friday before, so we had part of the conversation. But there are two things that Roger mentioned that are important, and your point is also very important, absolutely true. And I think the one thing that matters is that we're not pretending that we can do things that we can't do. The other day I was in a call with a director of a pharmaceutical in China, and he said to me, it's great, because every model is bad, but some are useful. It looks like you have a useful one. And I think this is what you have to see. And what Roger explained, with Digimat, and at the time, is that, we go back 20 odd years. At the time, you couldn't do things. But the truth is, 30 years ago, nobody used simulation. Today, the person who designs something without using simulation is either loose cannon, a genius, or somebody who's going to fail. Every model gives you information that you don't have without the modeling part. And that is key in learning to improve the model, but also to make differences. In the very same way that you mentioned about the heart. And yes, there are a few things that are, we know that we still have a lot of work to do. But you introduce some systematic aspects, systematic analysis. The first thing I realized, and I don't know if that's the same case for Roger for the spine, but I assume that there are a lot of things are like that too. You go and talk to the doctors. It's an artisan's job. When the guy does the first surgery on the spine, and then we'll do the second one, and then we'll do the third one, he doesn't intend to do it 3 times. The reason it takes 8 hours and sometimes 5 surgeons to do it is because these guys have to react on the spot. You have to see, shit, it's doing this. It's not meant to. I'm going to do something else. Okay? So it's exactly the same thing that happened in every other industrial sector. You start to do things, you start to question things, you start to see things, and you say, this is wrong. But a bad result is not always a useless result. And this is the thing. And unless we start, we will never get there. And the reason, one of the things that has made a huge difference, when Roger was saying, why everywhere and not, medicine? Because the starting point for medical systems is already complex. So, and you cannot do, without complex materials, without multiphysics, without multiscale. Okay. So we had to wait until suddenly you started to have codes that did the multiphysics part, and until you had the computational power that gave you access to more complex simulations. And the last part is to have things like AI to actually go through data sets and give you the extra information that you don't have and you couldn't measure. So, of course, you're absolutely right. But unless we do it and we start now, we'll never have it. It's very exciting. I love this, by the way, and really, it's the whole point. One of the main issues with the increase in age, the increase in diseases, more people having access to healthcare and everything else, and the fact that doctors don't all want to work 24 hours a day anymore, is that you have huge strains on resources. And today, the outcome from a surgery still depends on how lucky you are to get to the right practitioner. So when you have these sort of things, one of the things that you do is maybe the guy who is a genius will always be a genius. Fabergé will be Fabergé, and he didn't need simulation to make the egg, okay? But if somebody wants to replicate it, you need the model. So one of the aspects is with these tools is making sure that you lower the bar. And that's important, making sure that you increase the chances for the guy who doesn't have, the surgeon from the Rochester Hill Hospital to actually give you the same outcome than the guy who is in Rochester. And I think that's not bad.
No, you don't learn it like once and for all. You need for every patient, it's a different case, and you need to plan the surgery and go with your plan into the operation room and apply exactly what you planned. You cannot improvise during surgery too much, at least in spine surgery, from what I know, it's not good to improvise. So what you have to do is plan your surgery before, based on geometrical and biomechanical KPIs, basically, and go and execute what you planned. And you need it for every surgery. There are surgeries which are complex or reoperation, which is a must-have. There are surgeries which you are trying to solve a problem. Let's say the patient has a specific pain at a given point, and the surgeon will think that doing this will solve the problem. And he can create, by the surgery, he can create bigger problems if you don't account for all the balance and so on. So our objective is that this software, our secret objective, but I will share it with you, is that every spine surgeon, neurosurgeon, or orthopedic surgeon for every surgery, so it's 250 surgeons, 250,000 surgeons for every surgery, which are 2 million a year, will be using our software. It's like today when you want to go from point A to point B, even if you know the road, you will put Waze to tell you the traffic and whatever. So our objective is to be used on a day in, day out. Anyway, yeah, this is a problem. Yeah, we need the luck. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a nice setup here. We have the optimistic and the pessimistic in the same room, and this is what we face all our day in, day out. Okay, so thanks a lot. But if we do it in 5 years, I will be the happiest man on earth, because typically it will take 15.
Okay, so thank you. So we're on top of the hour, so we will soon close. But maybe I have a question, because this is a webinar to inspire people who might start entrepreneurship activities. So you're involved in TwinSight, you're involved in LM, so the creator of MDSim. So how long do you evaluate the time these companies have to rest 100% on the shoulders of external investors and funders before they can start to make money out of the products? Yeah, I know.
I would say long time. Minimum. My experience from what I know today, for some of the companies that I saw, 10 years is like a minimum. You require several millions. In my own math, I estimated that I need 8 million minimum to get to 5 years. Some others that I discussed with, they already raised 7, 8 million, 10 million plus, same amount from government funding. So it, typically 10 to 20 millions. So and sometimes the company will be acquired and integrated in a larger company before making money. So before making any profit, you know, like it's losing money, losing money, losing money. All is invested into development, and at some point of time, if the clinical interest is there and if it starts to be used by clinicians for real outcome, typically larger company will integrate you because they have the infrastructure to go to market, because there's a technology, there's a regulation, and there's a go to market, and convincing a surgeon to use it, find a way to be reimbursed, find a way who will pay for it, and so on and so forth. And you need sales in every hospital, you need support engineer in every hospital. So it's crazy as a go-to-market. So typically it's done by larger company. I don't know if you answered your question, but it's not something where you make money the first months or first year or first 5 years even.
Yeah, you did.
So you don't do it for the money. This is what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, we'll be doing something else.
I think that's very important. And management of expectations when you engage in these activities is super important. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I guess we can then close the seminar here, the webinar. Thank you very much, Roger, for having shared and for the discussion. Thank you also to Chris from LM, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.